All right, guys, so this is my very first attempt at my very first ever episode of a podcast. I was listening to someone else's podcast and she was kind of talking about how she's been sitting on her dream of starting her podcast for 7 years. And I remember, I think I was like 10 years ago, I wanted to become a life coach. I wanted to be on YouTube and share motivational videos and just help people. And now 10 years later, I am barely starting my podcast. And so it just hit me. It's like, that's what I should make the first topic about. So today what I want to talk about is pretty much fear, and how fear actually holds us back, and how fear actually limits us from chasing our dreams and doing the very thing that we were probably put on this earth to do. And so it's funny because I am a major perfectionist. And so part of why I never started a podcast is because I didn't have the proper lighting. I didn't have the proper equipment. I didn't have a really nice apartment with a backdrop, right? So there was a lot of things that I told myself weren't good enough to even record or be on camera. And now here I am, right? So I was actually at the gym. I am not wearing makeup. I'm in my gym clothes. I'm sitting in my car, and I decided, you know what? Today is the day. I am done letting fear determine what I do and when I do it. And then it started raining. And I just think that is so ironic, and it is so funny, but it's also so powerful, because for someone like me, with the fear of, it's really, what is perfection? Like, what is a perfectionist? We are afraid of maybe something failing, maybe something not being good enough, afraid of what people are gonna say, like caring what people are gonna think, how they're gonna judge the lighting and the backdrop. But to be honest, I am the most comfortable in my gym clothes. I am the most motivated after my workout, and I am in my car. It is also a very comfortable space. I sit in my car, I journal in my car, I play music in my car. So what better space to record in? And also, honestly, me doing this with all the lack of perfection, it's a statement to myself, to my inner self, that I don't need it to be perfect. Like, what I have to say and the passion that I have, that I want to put out, is worthy just as it is. And so I'm coming to you at my in my first episode as authentic as possible, and I just find that perfect, ironically, right? Because this whole time, I'm telling you, 10 years, a decade, I have recorded videos on Instagram, maybe here and there, but I was too scared to put myself out there on a more long form video, because what if I mess up? What if I say what if? It's fear. It's straight up fear. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. It's like how much fear actually limits us and really holds us back. And to be honest, like, if nobody ever watches this, that's fine, because me recording this is almost for me at this point. It's to just take a stand and take action and quit, like, the word is procrastinating, that's coming to mind, but quit procrastinating. And why do I procrastinate? Because I get overwhelmed when I think about the perfection that I have to reach to be able to produce the content that I think people need. So if I really break it down, it's just fear. It's fear that I'm not good enough. It's fear that I'm not going to be successful, right? Fear of failure. And also fear of being judged, right? Like, what are people going to think? I'm sitting in my car. But I think the people that are for me, the people that I'm trying to reach and talk to, they're going to see the car and they're going to see the rain, and they're going to be like, this is what I need, right? Somebody somewhere is going to need it. And if it's only one person that finds this and feels inspired to go do the same thing, then it was worth it. And so, yeah, fear is such a big topic. Like, it shows up everywhere. So for me, it's shown up in my podcast, in my life coaching business, in right, in that aspect. But it also shows up in my relationships. It shows up at work. It shows up pretty much everywhere, right? Because if I think something has to be perfect before I can try it or before I can put myself out there, that's going to affect me everywhere. That's what I call a limiting belief. So limiting beliefs are pretty much deep-rooted beliefs about yourself or the world, and we pretty much decide these types of beliefs. We kind of create them when we're children. So, 5 years old, something happens, probably traumatic, and you decide that the world is not safe, that people judge, and in order to stay safe, what do? You create a personality trait where it's like, I'm going to be an overachiever. I'm going to be perfect. I am going to strive so that they can love me, so that they won't judge me, so that I can be safe. That is a child, like, black and white mindset. But as we grow up, the world kind of shows us proof that, look, I was right. Because if I don't do well, they judge. Or, basically, the world teaches us and conditions us and just proves that belief over and over until we can kind of grow up and kind of break free from the worldly views and like the limiting beliefs, and we actually do some inner child work and we realize, like, oh my gosh, I created the fact and the belief that I have to be perfect to earn love, that I have to be perfect to be enough, that it has to be perfect for me to record something that I do believe is so common. I know I'm not the only one that struggles with this. So what I have to say can actually help somebody, or someone can actually relate to it. But what was more important was me hiding in fear and staying stuck and just sitting on my dream because I'm too scared. So yes, and then again, like I was saying, this actually shows up in your relationships. It can show up at work. The way I say that it shows up at work is kind of when we put our self-worth into work, where, like, if I don't hit the sales goal, I don't feel good enough. If I'm not at the top of the team, if I'm not producing, if I'm not striving, if I'm not showing you what I'm worth, then I won't be worth anything, right? So it can show up in that way, but it can also show up in relationships. And honestly, like, I think relationships it's the hardest, right? Because you can get the most triggered when love is on the line. Like, nothing is more scary than potentially losing love, companionship, like losing people. Like, that is probably my biggest fear, right? And so, like, if you really get even deeper, you got perfection, but what's the root? It's I'm not good enough, and I'm scared you may not want me, or you may leave me because I'm not good enough, right? So, like, it can go super deep, and then it really does affect the relationship, because then you show up in a state of fear, in a state of lack, in a state of I have to earn love. And that really shifts dynamics. That really leads to, honestly, like, trauma in relationships, attachment style issues, trauma bonds, codependency, and it can get really dark. And I'm saying that because I've been there. And so you actually lose yourself in those beliefs, and you make them true by the way you act and the way you allow people to treat you, because you believe that is all you're worth. And you believe, well, that's all I've ever gotten, and that's all I ever know, so you believe it. So it takes a lot of inner child work. It takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes a lot of healing, right? And so that is truly my passion. My passion is to talk about these things, is to bring it to light, is to increase awareness, but also it's to relate, because I think there's such a, what is the word I'm looking, like a stigma potentially, or a fear of being judged, right? Like, if I said, I used to be codependent, or I struggled with attachment, anxious attachment, then people want to label you, and they want to judge what that means and what that looks like. But everything is on a spectrum. There is no black and white, you either are or you're not. There's a lot of gray area. And so, yeah, I love this topic because it is so real. It is so real and it is so common. But I think a lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable and afraid to be honest and afraid to go there. And so here I am stepping out to talk about it. And I would love nothing more than, even if one person hears this and can say, wow, like I really can relate to that, then everything was worth it. So yeah, stay tuned for the next episode.